Russ Long has made his home in Nashville since the late 1980s, where he spends his time engineering, producing a wide range of music and film projects. His credits include the hits Kiss Me and There She Goes by Sixpence None the Richer, albums by Wilco, The Newsboys, Over the Rhine, Amy Grant, Reliant K, Dolly Parton, Jim Brickman, and Stephen Curtis Chapman. Russ is a multitasker. He also records soundtracks for many movies, worked on 5.1 remixes, recorded live concerts, worked on broadcast audio for several TV shows and specials, and in his spare time writes articles and reviews for the top pro audio magazines and raises kids in his spare time.
I do my best.
Yeah. He also is a studio owner, has taught music technology at Belmont and Lipscomb universities. In 2006, Russ reviewed Aurora. He also reviewed Hilo a few years later. We never got the Aurora back. It became his go-to converter. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So Russ, the first question I like to ask people is, why do you do what you do?
Well, I love music. I love the process of creating an album. I love the process of working with musicians in the studio and creating music. I found it exciting, and it's something I've wanted to do since I was young. I got into it, and I figured it was something I would enjoy for 10 or 11 years, and it's never gotten old, so I've never stopped.
Okay. And why did you adopt Aurora as your go-to converter?
Well, I'm fortunate in doing equipment reviews to have a lot of different pieces of equipment come in and out of my studio, and occasionally something will come through the studio that I'll try and fall in love with, and come to the conclusion that I can't make records without this. And the Aurora was one of those pieces of gear. I reviewed it, and not only did it sound fantastic, it worked extremely well, interfaced with Pro Tools flawlessly, and I was also very intrigued by the company. There's always issues when interfacing pieces of equipment with other pieces of equipment, and the tech support at Lynx is astounding, and I could tell that they really cared about making things work perfectly. I've got a policy of when I'm doing a review and I have to interface with a company, I try to speak with somebody and not let them know that I'm working on a review, so I can see what kind of customer support anybody who purchased the product would have. And my experience with Lynx was that they cared about me, they wanted to make sure my stuff worked, and it was a great experience.
Okay. I'm going to play a couple cuts here today of some things you've done. And the first cut is by a group, Waterdeep. Tell us a little bit about this recording.
Well, this is a record I mixed just over a year ago, and one of the things that I found the Lynx Aurora, it was critical to making the record sound the way it did, and that's partially because most of the time when I mix a record, I have some kind of stereo bus compression going on, and as we were trying to frame the sonic shape of the album, what we found out was the stereo bus compression that we liked on the band didn't necessarily work for the vocal when the vocal was mixed with the band. So we ended up doing a fair amount of routing in and out of converters, and summed the entire band without vocals, did some bus compression on the band, had separate bus compression on the vocals and backing vocals, the stem of those combined together, and then recombined all of this, went back into the box, recombined all those elements, and then applied more stereo bus compression, and the result was what we found to be the perfect sound for the record. But the critical thing was we were going in and out of the box multiple times, and if you use lower than pristine converters, a lot of times artifacts are inducted into the sound, and it becomes compromised, and that was not the case with the Lynx Aurora. I was able to get pristine, perfect sound and still use the compression I was looking for. But yeah, have a listen and keep that in mind as you're listening.
Okay, this is Waterdeep.
You might never leave, or you might just disappear. And I wonder,
how's the Nashville recording scene changed over the last 10 years?
There's been drastic changes over the last decade or so. 15 or 20 years ago, if I was going to be involved in a record, I would typically be booked for an entire project, often 6 weeks for the tracking process and overdub process, or sometimes if I was mixing as well, I might get booked for 2 months on a single project. And now, with regardless of the budget of a record, almost every record is partially done in a home studio, so it's way more common to get booked for 2 or 3 days. For me anyway, I never recorded album beginning to end unless I'm producing it. I'll get hired to just do the tracking portion and be involved for 2 or 3 days for the full tracking, or I'll be hired to record strings, or I'll be hired to mix. And even if I'm doing all three of those elements on a record, they're not in a row. I mean, it might be 3 days of tracking, and then 6 weeks later I'll be hired to do a day of strings, and then a week later I'll start mixing, and sometimes I'll mix the whole record, or sometimes I'll only mix a track or two, and there'll be multiple engineers. And then the other big difference is most engineers mix in their own studios, and it's a given as far as the record labels are concerned that you be able to recall a mix at any point. So if somebody at the label, the record could be completely signed off on by the producer, by the band, and I could be pleased with it. But if somebody at the label hears it and thinks that there shouldn't be a tambourine in the bridge, then I have to recall that mix to pull the tambourine out of the bridge. That would have never happened 15 years ago, but it's just the way things are done now. So you're constantly revisiting projects, and even if you set aside 2 weeks to mix a record, you got to generally plan on having multiple weeks of going back, doing minor tweaks on that record while you're continuing to work on new projects.
A lot of balls up in the air.
Yeah, it can be a little crazy.
Okay. We're going to listen to another song here, Same as the Devil. It's sung by Reagan Lorraine. Tell us a little bit about this one.
Reagan Lorraine's a singer-songwriter in Nashville who I fell in love with her music about, I think 5 or 6 years ago. She did an album and hired me to mix it, and she was on the fence about how hard to pursue her music, and kept going back and forth. I kept sending her emails and having her send me more music, and I think she didn't feel like she connected real well with her producer on the record that I had mixed, and I guess about 2 years ago she asked me to, or maybe it was even 3 years ago, she asked me to produce an EP for her, and we did that, and it turned out great. It was just 4 songs, I believe, and then she got such good response from it that she decided to turn it into a full record. So we spent the last year in several blocks of time finishing it out, and it's a 11-song record now, or no, it's a 13-song record that is not released yet. I think it's coming out in March. But she's an independent artist, doesn't have a label, and but she's fantastic.
Okay, let's hear a little bit of it.
I've got darkness. I've got envy. It's rotting my bones. I've got rage flowing through my veins. Right next to you. Right next to you.
You also worked on a PBS show called Legends and Lyrics. Tell us a little bit about the audio for that.
Legends and Lyrics was a show that aired on PBS a few years ago, and it was actually 2 different seasons that I was involved in. And the concept behind the show was to get 3 well-known artists from different genres, and sometimes they were from people from bands, or other times they were solo artists, but they would bring the 3 together, and they would tell stories about their songs and play the songs acoustically. And it was really great because a lot of times the younger musicians who were from really big, currently big bands, were highly influenced by these other guys who were not so well known today, but had been influential in them when they were young and getting into music. So there was a great dynamic between the songwriters, and we shot these concerts that incorporated all of that. And Fred Paragano was the producer behind, the music producer behind all of them, and he was. I was working along with him on capturing all the audio, and then I mixed a few of the episodes, which we mixed at Paragon Studios in Franklin, which is his studio, and it was really exciting because they were all mixed in 5.1, which allowed us to try to recreate that same atmosphere from the theaters where we shot the episodes. So it was an exciting thing to see that through beginning to end, and see the excitement of the show in the actual capturing of the audio, and then trying to recreate that exact same surrounding feeling for the people who viewed it at home.
Okay, very good. You talked a little bit earlier about how a lot of your projects are bounced around a lot. What's your overall approach to working with artists?
The most important thing, I think, in working with an artist is making sure you don't get in the way of the artist. A lot of people spend a lot of time using technology to get in the way of the flow, the creative flow in the studio. And even though you want to make things sound as good as possible, if you spend 4 hours switching out microphones, switching out preamps, messing with the position of the placement of the musicians in a room, and everybody is completely burned out before you start to record, it's all lost, because it doesn't matter if you have the best sounding recording in the world if the performances are completely dead. So I like to, even though I want it to sound as good as it can, I don't want to get in the way of the performance. I try to work quick. I try to make the artists and the musicians completely blind to the technical aspect. And even though I'm dealing with a lot of technology, from their standpoint, I want them to feel like they've got another musician sitting in the room with them, and I'm just there making sure things go smooth. And if I've done my job right, I feel like they're completely blind to the technology, and they just are excited about making great music.
Okay. And last question, you had a chance to review Hilo a couple years ago. What were your thoughts about Hilo?
Hilo's amazing. As far as a 2-channel A to D and D to A, it's the best I've heard. And I know I've shared this with you in the past, but I'm in the process of planning out my new mix space, and that's what I want to incorporate into the space. It's functionality and adaptability to make it work with any situation, any kind of computer, any kind of setup. So it's, whether you're running Logic on a laptop or if you've got a full-blown Pro Tools HDX system, it's the perfect converter for that. And there's all kinds of aspects about it that I don't know if I would even incorporate, with the fact that it can easily be turned into a portable DAC to take into the field, and battery powered make it even more attractive. But yeah, it's a fantastic piece of gear.
Okay, great. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.